what do you want people to think of?
You know, it's, I've always said that I wanted to be remembered as a player that didn't waste a moment. Welcome to the Kobe Show, take 2. Didn't waste a day.
Kobe, Kobe, Kobe.
And I felt extremely blessed by the God-given talent. But at the same time, I didn't take it for granted at all. So if I could be remembered as a person that was born with a lot of talent, but did everything he could to try to overachieve, and lived every day as if he was the 12th guy on the bench, you know, I think that's a very powerful message to have, and something that hopefully the players that are now and players that will come later choose to embody as well.
Moments that will live forever. Kobe Bryant and winning his first championship in 2000 against the Pacers. He had 26 and 10 in the decisive Game 6. Fast forward, January 2006, Kobe Bryant, a career-high 81 points against the Raptors, second most points scored by any player in any game in NBA history. 2009, a season after he was the MVP. He wins the first of 2 titles without Shaquille O'Neal. He was MVP of the finals that year and the following, cementing himself as one of the all-time greats. And then, of course, legendarily, 60 points in his final game. In the last interview I ever did with him, just last year, I asked him how he thought he stacked up against the other all-time greats in the sports history. This was his answer.
It's hard for people to believe, but I really don't care. You know, like, I've moved on. You know, so like, you have a career, you do the best you can with the 20 years that I was very fortunate to play, and then you shelf it. You're done. You move on to the next thing. So now I'm focused on these next 20 years, and so those debates are entertaining, I'm sure, and you know, it's fun for people to engage in those. But for me personally, it doesn't matter.
So when everyone gets into the, is LeBron better than Kobe, whatever it is, and you hear it, you can't not hear it.
Oh, yeah,
you
sure.
have like no reaction.
Sure. No, I think the best way to explain it is I typically do not engage in things that I cannot definitively win.
You know, I've asked those kinds of questions. I'm very fortunate to have been able to ask those kinds of questions to most of the greatest players of the last few generations. And almost all of them try and tell you they really don't care where people stack them up against others. He's the only one who ever said it that I believed it, because he didn't want to talk about his career. He really was already on to talking about other things.
Well, and then you watch his actions. What were his actions? His actions were all about expanding the next generation of basketball players, female, male, being there, like, you know, Leg said, for his daughter and helping to coach her. He even openly said it. She brought me back into the game. I wasn't even watching basketball, but because she had a love for it, it bonded us. Now, if you don't have if she's the one bringing you back, that means that you were away. Mm-hmm. And that was a very obvious and real statement. And that's why I think everyone connected with Gigi also so much.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to do here the last 2 days, and it's hard to do in the wake of what's happened, is to celebrate how genuinely great a player he was. He may not have wanted to talk about it, but that doesn't mean that we can't. And Legs, we were talking during the break here, and you made a comment I thought was really interesting about there were great athletes, and then there were great fundamentally sound players, and then there was Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, and as you know, when you played against these guys, and Rich, you know this, you could deal with the ridiculous athlete, but you could find a way to bait that person into maybe doing something they weren't comfortable doing, right? And there were shortcuts you could take to deal with that. And don't get me wrong, that was a challenge in and of itself. And then you had the super fundamentally sound guy, but he wasn't going to blow by you or jump over you. Those guys represented a different kind of challenge too, but again, wasn't a type of thing where your heart rate was going up because of that. Then you have a guy like Kobe Bryant, who had the ridiculous athleticism, freak athleticism, combined with what I think might be the greatest footwork in the history of the game. When you look at his ability to turn either shoulder, to pivot off either foot, to go either direction, he had no weakness whatsoever as a player. So when you combine the two things in one, now what you have is a nightmare on your hands. And that's what Kobe was to defend. And the other thing, Richard, was, and I played 10 years in the league, and Michael Jordan won 6 titles during that time. So I got to play against him a lot Two, barely got Kobe at the very beginning of his career. The one thing they did have in common, they were the only two guys I ever played against that never took a second off where they weren't thinking about going when they got it. So you could never relax. You couldn't turn your head for a split second, make the slightest mistake, they were back cutting you. Every time they caught it, their initial reaction was to turn square up and try to go on you. I played against a lot of Hall of Famers, and some of those guys would take plays off where they spotted up and watch somebody else play, and you could take a breath. Not the case with those.
Look, I played against prime Kobe and MJ on his comeback. And when I tell you, he was the first person, Kobe Bryant was the first person that when a play was called, he's like, they're running fist up, 5 down, watch the back cut. Like he was like a free safety in their defense. So to your point, when you combine the physical ability where, okay, he's one of the top 3 athletes, when you combine the footwork and the technique and how hard he worked there, and then you combine the mental, the ability to focus in and help his teammates. It was like you were sitting out there and you were going against a one-man machine and everything was built around him.
What were your conversations like with your teammates before you had to face Kobe? Like, how were you going to stop him?
Well, it was, did you get some rest? Because you knew that it was going to be on both sides. Now, I was so fortunate to play with Vince Carter for multiple years. And, you know, he always wanted that challenge. Like Kobe always, it didn't matter if it was T-Mac, it didn't matter who it was, he took that challenge. And so against Vince Carter, he would go and just try. And so I would have the fortune of having maybe the 3rd best defender on me. And if I ever got going, all of a sudden, it was a switch. And then Kobe was going to be guarding me. And you looked at it like, okay, this is a sign of respect. This is a sign of respect. He was like, this moment with Vince, I started on him, you're playing well. So he was just constantly moving back and forth to whoever it was. He felt it was time to slow down or stop.
We will have much more on Kobe as the day continues. And of course, the NBA season continues. And this. Good morning. This is Get Up on ESPN. Mike Greenberg, Laura Rutledge. And as you see, we have our whole crew ready to go to here. We will get into some Super Bowl coverage for you this morning with Bobby Carpenter and Bart Scott. Timmy Legler is here. Richard Jefferson is here because obviously the entire world of sports continues to mourn the death of Kobe Bryant and all the others in the helicopter crash in the Los Angeles area on Sunday. We have the very latest on the crash for you now. National Transportation Safety Board investigators confirm that the pilot was trying to climb above a layer of clouds before plunging into a canyon near Calabasas on the outskirts of Los Angeles. All 9 victims have now been identified, including the pilot of the helicopter. ESPN has confirmed he is 50-year-old Ara Zubayan. He had 2 decades of experience and had flown Kobe Bryant several times before. Meanwhile, the makeshift memorial outside the Staples Center continues to grow. The NBA has postponed tonight's game there between the Lakers and the Clippers.
And across the NBA, teams continued to pay tribute to Kobe Bryant. In Detroit, the Pistons wore jerseys with the number 24 on them. Former Laker Larry Nance Jr. seen crying on the Cavs bench and retreated to the locker room to collect himself during the game before eventually returning. In Minnesota, the Timberwolves took an 8-second violation and put the ball at the foul line where Kobe passed MJ on all-time scoring list. Former Laker coach and Kobe teammate Luke Walton looking on, and the Timberwolves fans showing their respect. And in Dallas, Luka Doncic, who talked with Kobe just last month, wore Kobe sneakers, wrote the names of all the victims in the crash on his shoes before the game. Here's Doncic on everything that Kobe meant to him.
It was very emotional. I broke down after the first quarter. That's when it really hit me. You know, just nervous moment. It was really hard to play today.
Kobe was a trailblazer. He was someone that I looked up to my entire childhood, wanting to be like him, wanting to hit the last-second shots like him. Not only as a basketball player, but just seeing how he maturated into it as a father. I think all of us on this court really strive to be like that in our second careers.
The image that keeps coming back to my head is the footage of Kobe and his daughter at the Laker game about a month ago when she's asking him questions and he's pointing things out, and think about how beautiful that scene was and how many incredible times they had ahead of them.
He lived his life to the fullest every single day, and he's an absolute inspiration, and I'm honored to be able to call myself his friend and his teammate and his brother and all those things that came with the years we spent together.
LeBron James took to Instagram last night to share his thoughts, which read in part, I'm not ready, but here I go. Man, just sitting here trying to write something for this post, but every time I try, I begin crying again, just thinking about you, niece Gigi, and the friendship, bond, brotherhood that we had. I literally just heard your voice Sunday morning before I left Philly to head back to LA. Didn't think for one bit in a million years that would be the last conversation we'd have. I'm heartbroken and devastated, my brother. Man, I love you, big bro. My heart goes to Vanessa and the kids. I promise you, I'll continue your legacy, man. You mean so much to us all here, especially Laker Nation, and it's my responsibility to put this on my back and keep it going. Meanwhile, Kobe's former teammate, Shaquille O'Neal, spoke on his podcast.